So hi guys, Jussa from Team Comics. As you can see, I'm not alone. I'm here with Vesa from PoriConi podcast, and we are talking about PoriConi comic festival, which happens every year in the city of Pori in Finland. And we had a blast last year, and we have an interview with Mr. Peter Snejbjerg. That's the main focus of this video. It happened last year and we are putting it out now because the next PoriConi is gonna happen month from now, so June 6th at Pori. And this will be a bilingual video, so I'm gonna hand the reins to Vesa and he's gonna explain some things in Finnish, and if I left something out, I'm gonna say them in English afterwards. So, off to you, Vesa.
Yes, morjens kaikille. Elikkä Vitikas Vesa, Sarismiehet podcast, ja toimin Porin sarjakuvafestivaalien järjestäjänä. Tänä vuonnahan meillä on 6.6. Anniksella tämän vuoden PoriConi, ja meillä on kans huippusakkia vieraana. Viime vuonna oli Peter Snejbjerg, Image-sarjakuvan tekijä, ja tänä vuonna meillä on DC-sarjakuvaa kirjoittanut Johanna Sinisalo. Hän on siis kirjoittanut kesäkuussa julkaistavaan DC:n Supergirl-sarjakuva-albumiin yhden tarinan, joka ilmeisesti sijoittuu Suomeen. Ja Johanna Sinisalohan on myöskin tunnettu sarjakuvan lisäksi niin Finlandia palkittuna tieteiskirjailijana. Eli kovaa settiä tulossa. Ja lisäksi meillä on Katja Kontturi, Disney-tohtori, tulee puhumaan Disney-sarjakuvista, sekä J.P. Ahonen, todella kova kotimainen tekijä, ja paljon muuta.
So, to make the Vesa's part short, one of the quests in PoriConi this year at city of Pori is gonna be Johanna Sinisalo, who has done a story about Supergirl, which comes out in the summer, and there's one story from her about Supergirl, so DC stuff, if someone likes DC. And then there's also J.P. Ahonen, and I forgot the third name, but you can check it out. It was the middle name.
Yeah, Katja Kontturi.
Yeah, Katja Kontturi. But yeah, without further ado, we are going to cut to the video with Mr. Peter Snejbjerg, and stay tuned because we are gonna show off some books afterwards that Mr. Peter Snejbjerg signed for us. And yeah, you may know Peter Snejbjerg from Hornsby Halo, from the new East Coast Machine series with Mr. Peter J. Tomasi. So stay tuned, enjoy the interview with Mr. Peter Snejbjerg, and the interview is done by Jouko Rmäki from Egmont Press. So enjoy, see you later, bye.
Okay, hello Peter.
Hello, hi Jouko.
Welcome to Finland.
Thank you, it's good to be here again.
Your third time?
Yes,
Every time a different city.
every time a different city, yes. Different city, a different bar.
But the same old interviewer.
The same old interviewer.
Yes. Okay, I thought that this time we would go the other way because
I interview you.
no, but we would start from the finish. So your new series,
Yes, let's talk about that.
Halo and Hornsby. How
Yes.
did that come about?
It, as always, with somebody writing me an email and asking if I want to work for them. The story is that Jeff Johns, that some of you may know, he was a writer for DC, and he was also an editor and editor-in-chief for a time. And he's been involved in a lot of the DC movies and TV series and stuff like that. He wanted to start something new. So he started up a couple of books himself, Geiger and what's it called, Rook. And also he had an idea, he wanted to do a book that ended up being Red Coat. And so at some points, I think he was talking to Tomasi and some other people, and they sort of, why not make a whole line of new books? Well, we're starting with this, which is a really crazy idea, but they talked some people into putting some money in it, and they started the new company called Ghost Machine, which is built around these few books that they already had started, and then they needed some more books. So Tomasi started writing 2 new books, and they needed artists for that, and he was working with Francis Manipul, who had done Flash with Tomasi and Jeff, and so they called me if I wanted to work on the other book, and I said, of course, yes. Sounded like a totally crazy plan, but I was like, I can say yes because it's not going to happen, so there's to be no consequences to saying yes. But then it actually happened, and now I have to draw this book, which is great, which is actually fantastic.
So did you have any input in the content, or was
yes,
there...
we did have, Tomasi had some ideas, but they were a little vague, so we had a long session where we sat down and we talked about what we wanted to do and what, not so much necessarily what the series was going to be about, but what kind of book we wanted to do. And we still have story sessions where we sit down and we talk about what do we want to do next and what will happen and things like that. We have some plans for it, but we also have, it's also very open what we're going to do. It's not like we have plotted out. It's not the kind of book where you plot out a 50-issue arc. It's more like we know what the characters are, we know where we want them to go, but we also have some ideas about what we may, some it's more like a ramble than a drive down a road that you've already planned. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think.
And it seems that it's maybe a bit more all ages book than your vertical
Yes,
books.
we decided to do it. We've talked a lot about this because in American comics, there's always been this hard line with kids' books being sort of not particularly successful in the US, not since World War II or whatever. And there's this conception that children's books, children's comics books are just not, it's like sort of, it's not something people take very seriously, but we really want this to be a really good book. We're putting as much work into it as we would in any other. So by what we mean by all ages is not that it's a children's book, but more that it's a book that's not meant to exclude any readers. So it should hopefully, like the cliche goes, be a book that anybody from 7 to 70 will enjoy and beyond. But which our fans will also be 70 at some point. So that's sort of what we're thinking with that.
What would the concept, because I know that the series has not been published in Finland yet, and there may be some people in the audience who haven't yet bought the issues. So how would you paraphrase the theme of the story?
The catchphrase for the book is sort of nature versus nurture, and it's about two kids who are just turning 13, and they live in New York, not in New York City, but in the state of New York in the US, out in the countryside, and they are in a small all-American city, and they have their 13th birthday. They're not related, but they go in the same class. They know each other, and they have the same birthday, and it's the 13th birthday. And what they find out as the story progresses is that weird stuff starts to happen, and they find out that they are actually respectively a devil and an angel who have been adopted by human families, and that of course has part of a cosmic plot, which we slowly will find out about as the story progresses. So it's mostly about these two teenagers as they are now, beginning to find out that their world is very different from what they thought, and they are not really who they thought they were. So it's a coming of age story, you can say, and it's mostly taking place in the real world, but it has fantasy elements, of course, because there's also going to be some trips to heaven and hell, and there'll be various supernatural entities that start mixing up in the story as we go along. But we're taking it very slow. It starts out being very grounded, and we're in the real world, and they're going to school and stuff like this, but so slowly strange things start to happen.
Yes, I've noticed that there are already zombies
in
the story.
Well, it's actually going quite fast, but compared with most comic book stories, we're going slow.
but you have a list of things you want to draw, and
Yeah, we have some. It's like this. We have a really good chemistry, Tomas and me, and there's some things that are not very often seen in American comics that we want to do, that we want to steer the story so we can tell these stories that and deal with some of these things that are normally not something you deal with so much in American comics. So it's also going to be a story with some family issues, but it's not going to be like, but it's going to be in a little different way than you normally see it, and there'll be some serious stuff and there'll be some dark stuff, but there's also going to be some really fun stuff. I think I'm enjoying it a lot, really a lot. It feels like the beginning of a really big thing, I would say.
have you gotten any feedback or any?
Yeah.
Do you know how it's going in the States?
It's going okay. The reception has been positive. It's always with a new concept that doesn't build on an existing property. It's always like you have to build up for a while before it really takes off. But we're doing okay, and Ghost Machine is in a situation where they're playing the long game. They have investors who have placed money in them, so we don't have to worry about the first couple of years. We just need to set up the stuff and make it moving, and then of course we're hoping that it will gather momentum as we go and as we start doing collected editions and stuff like that. But I think we're okay.
There's also the probably more familiar to Finnish readers is the Image logo on the covers.
Yeah. Image it's Ghost Machine is the company that owns and produces the comics, and we are all partners. All the people involved are partners in Ghost Machine. But Image is taking care of the distribution and the printing and all that stuff. So Ghost Machine is only the creative part of the process. So they're partnered with Image about having them deal with all the practical stuff.
Okay, so Todd McFarlane is not telling you.
No,
what to
he's
do.
not involved. Although I know he's talking. I mean, him and Jeff they're sort of like on a level above the head of the rest of us, and they're talking up in the comic book clouds. They're having conversations about stuff and things like that, where we mortals down here are executing whatever.
And is it coming out once a month, or what's the schedule?
It's a monthly. Which means that there'll be once in a while there'll be a guest artist issue. There's going to be 2 issues coming up. I just finished working on issue 8, and issue 9 and 10 is going to be another artist, another old DC hand that Tomas has brought aboard. And then I'm starting to work on issue 11 now, because making a monthly book is a little bit more than I can actually do. So we have to once in a while do something so I can catch up. But it's a monthly book, and with a few exceptions, it'll be me doing everything.
Yeah, you are not using like a inker.
No, I've never been able to work in that system. It's never really worked for me. So it's a lot of work. But I'm confident we can keep it up.
Okay, and going backwards, my next question is: you've now worked for the American publishers for 25 years, or close to that.
30 years.
30 years, okay.
30, coming up on something. Yeah.
And how does that happen? How does a comic artist from Denmark end up working for the big American publishers?
Luck, I think. Back when I think it was easier back in when I started. I think the American comic book market was a lot more open in those days. There was also a lot of British people coming to work for them, but there's still people. I mean, it's not like it's closed. Like I was just talking to Max, and she's apparently made it in there as well. So it's not like it's a closed club and you can't get in. But I think it was easier in the 90s. We did some European comics that were published with some American publishers, and that's sort of one thing led to another. We got to, when I say we here, I mean me and Teddy Christiansen, who was another Danish artist I was working with at the time. so we sort of got to talk with some American writers and stuff, and things sort of started happening, and it was I don't know. I never planned to do it. It wasn't like, I mean, obviously I love doing comics, but I never thought that it would happen. But suddenly, it sort of just started happening, and suddenly we were doing it. That didn't sound very clever.
How did your interest in comics start? What made you decide to become a comic artist originally? Was it the American comics or?
No. I was a Tintin fan when I was a kid. So I think the first comics I did was like Tintin inspired. You can see some elements, but I think it was mostly because comics was something you could do by yourself. That was the great thing about making comics, is that you could just, as a 8-year-old kid, you could just sit and draw your own comics. That was so great. I think that was almost more important than reading comics for me from the beginning. And then I loved the Donald Duck comics. The Carl Barks stuff was a great inspiration. I still really enjoy those books as well. American comics didn't come for me until the 80s, I think, when I discovered American underground comics and American horror comics, and that was sort of what led me into reading American comics.
Yeah, you mentioned when we talked in Oulu a couple of years back that you were never a superhero fan.
No, superheroes was never really my thing. It's not that I have anything against them. It was just not. There wasn't that many who was interested in them that I knew. It wasn't. There was some that were published in Denmark, but it was not like a huge deal, and none of my friends were really into them. So I think it was more. It was more the horror stuff that got me into it. And European albums as well. I like the European humorous comics, and I've always enjoyed the two genres of horror and humor, and I've always wished that there was more of a mixture of them, which is also something I like about, because Hornsby and Halo is not a horror book, but it does have elements of I mean, there's devils in it, and there's like monsters and stuff, but it also has a lot of humor, and I really enjoy that.
And I think that kind of describes a lot of what you have done for the American publishers.
Yeah.
You've done some superhero films like Batman and so forth, but mainly.
Yeah, but they were never really. Often they were like the not straight superhero comic stories. They were like the weird stories, so the stories that were like the longest thing I did in superheroes was Starman, which I did for 2.5 years, I think, or something like that. But Starman was also a weird book. It was not a straight superhero book. So it had a lot of really embarrassing things that James Robinson dug out of the DC closets and all kinds of weird stuff.
And you also did a lot of stuff for Vertigo when it was released.
Yeah. Vertigo was how I got most of the stuff when I started with American comics was Vertigo, which was also not superheroes.
Yeah.
It was horror and but often with a little twist, a little all the game and stuff, and I did a long run on Books of Magic, which also had a lot of Hornsby and Halo. In a lot of ways, feels like a return to those Vertigo days. I feel like the book has a lot of that vibe that I remember from the Vertigo days, actually.
And how do you work nowadays? I guess when you started, it was pencil and
pen. You mean physically?
Yeah, physically.
Yeah. I work on a screen on a Cintiq on a digital, which is. I mean, I really like actually the sitting here and doing sketches is really interesting because I really like the physical, but it's just in practical terms when you're working as much as I do, the digital is just better because it's faster and you can use backups and you don't have to spend time scanning your work and things like that. So when I retire and I only do comics for fun, maybe I'll return to making them on paper. But for now, it's just, and also I really like the digital process. Actually, I like the tools that you have. But I miss having the physical artwork, obviously.
How about the sales of the original pages? Was that ever?
It was never a really big deal for me. I mean, I sold a lot of the old stuff over the years, but it's not like it's not something that has been a big income for me. And also because I don't go to American festivals, which I think is where you sell most of the stuff. So it's not as important as the actual work that you do when you're doing the books to be published. That is the end result. That is the important thing is the physical books that come out, I think.
But you were never like I read somewhere that Brian Bolland, who was one of the first to move to digital, he said that he was really happy that there are no originals anymore because he always hated the idea of his artwork being on somebody's wall.
He did?
Yeah, that's what he said in some interview.
Okay.
That was never a problem for you.
No, if people were gonna give me money for them, they can have them. I mean, and I have a stack this high, and if anybody is interested, write me. We can make a deal.
And you are marked as a storyteller in Halo and Hornsby, but
yeah, because we do work a bit back and forth. It's not so strictly. I mean, Tomáš still writes a script and so on, but we have a lot more feedback, and also because we do have an editor, Brian Cunningham, but he's more like he's working for us than the other way around. So we decide what to do, and we can mix the process up as we want, which is also great, of course.
But you have also worked as a writer for Disney.
Yes, I did some Donald Duck stories. There was that has been a great joy to do that. Also because I grew up with the Carl Barks comics, so it was fun getting to dip into the universe after 40 years and discover that you actually knew all this and you could. It was really easy because you knew everything that needed to go into the stories. That was a lot of fun.
How did that work out? Did you do just scripts, or did you also do kind of like layouts? Like
I did scripts and layouts. It actually started out because there's a woman called Gail Renard who is an English writer she's doing English TV shows and stuff like that. But she was doing some I don't know how she got into it, but she was doing some Donald Duck stories for Egmont in Copenhagen. And but Egmont wanted layouts as well. They didn't just want the scripts. And the problem was she didn't know how to write comics, but she had funny ideas. So my first job was sort of I took her ideas and then made them into comic scripts. And we worked on that for a while, and then I started doing my own work after a while. And so they actually just started out with just as a gig where I was helping someone who needed some help. But then I started doing more stories and did a fair number of stories over the period of some years. And I really enjoyed it. It's a very interesting format because the Donald Duck stories are very short usually. Like a lot of them are like 10 pages maybe for the magazine and maybe 30 pages for the books. I know they're longer stories, but they're mostly produced by the Italians. So it's very compressed storytelling. So it's super interesting. How do you tell this complex story in 10 pages? And it's very enjoyable.
Weren't you ever tempted to draw?
Yeah, but I at some point I was like, maybe I should try, but it's just so far away from what I do normally that it would take me years to be able to do it in a way that made sense. I mean, maybe I could have done a short story, but it would have taken me forever to get it done well enough. So I gave it up. But it would have been fun. I mean, when you're doing the layouts, it's really fun to sit and work on the expressions and stuff like that. But there's a long way from that and to drawing the whole universe in that style. I don't think that's gonna happen.
And speaking of writing, of course, you wrote the book Marlene.
Yes,
which came out in Finland a couple of years ago.
Yes. It's actually an older book that I did 25 years ago or something like that. So it's not a new book, but it came out in as you say, in Finland. Was that 3-4 years ago?
Something like that. Yeah.
It's a horror comic I made for the Danish market, which is you can see some pages downstairs, and it's still a story I enjoy a lot. It's I would like to do more stuff that I like that, but it's not while I'm doing Hornsby and Halo because you can't do more than one project at a time. When you're doing a comic, it's just full-time work. You can't. I can't do 2 books at least. So, but sometime in the future, when you know.
But you have been quite lucky with the script writers you have worked with. You worked with.
Yeah, I've worked with some of the best. Yes. That's been one of the great joys of working in American comics is really that I've been working with some fantastic writers. All of them have actually been really, really good. I don't think there's a single one where I can say this was terrible. Garth Ennis and John Arcudi, I worked with a lot, doing a lot of stuff. Of course, Tomasi, and all these people have just been fantastic.
So you don't want to name any favorite authors?
Well, right now I'm enjoying my collaboration with Tomasi, of course. And I've always really liked working with Garth Ennis because he's really, and the books I did with John Arcudi, those are getting to be a few years back, but we did a superhero deconstructivist story called A God Somewhere, which I still think is a really, really good book. I don't think it's ever come out in Finnish.
Nope.
No, but it's a really good book. That was really, and now of course I've worked with John on a lot of the BPRD stuff for Dark Horse. We did a lot of things there that I think are really good. I mean, he's a very clever writer too. I don't know how much he's doing nowadays, but he's really a good writer.
And you also got to work with Alan Moore, I think.
No, I don't know. No, I never got to work with Alan. No,
Okay.
sorry, no.
Did you do something for the collected editions? No, I guess I'm
No, I don't think so.
misremembering.
No,
I'll have to
I
check
don't
that
think
when
so.
I get back home.
No, I did a issue of some Strong, but that was after Moore left the book.
Okay,
Was,
so it wasn't by him.
That was there was an English. That's embarrassing because I know who it is. The name just doesn't pop up, but it'll come back to me. Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of forgetting, I forgot my notebook back there, so all my
Okay,
questions are
yeah.
there. So far, I've been doing
We
well,
can
but
just make up stuff.
yeah.
You can
And-
make up the question, and I can make up the answers.
And if somebody from the audience has any questions, please just raise your hands and
Yeah, because you could just.
One, but it's actually about the publishing. You say that it's probably not going to be published in Finland. But
No, I don't.
is it-
I don't know. I don't
yeah,
know.
But is it the best place to buy it from Amazon or some other e-commerce website? Especially the Hornsby and Halo.
Yeah, maybe you should. I don't, you buy Hornsby and Halo from a German publisher, right?
Yeah.
A German shop, right?
Yeah. What's coming up?
Okay.
Because it's.
Some local
Yeah.
comic shop
Yeah,
from Finland. There are several others also.
Okay.
Oh, great.
yeah, I meant to say that I buy it from that guy over there who's eating.
There is also Turun sarjakuvakauppa if you don't want to support Amazon.
Over there.
In Light Brigade you have angels fighting here, and in Halo there are angels.
Yes.
And in Marlene there are actually Satanists and succubus. So do you like working with religious kind of topics, or is it just coincidence?
It's a little. I think it is. How can I? It is a coincidence, but I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of interesting that it seems to have become a theme, but it's not something I've consciously. I think in Light Brigade, which was also Peter Tomasi in this book, I think it's because Peter Tomasi he was Greek Orthodox, and I think he was an altar boy, and maybe he has some trauma he has to work off or something. But there's something interesting in the themes of religion, which I think is super interesting. But it's not something. It's not like I particularly seek it out. I think it just sort of happens. I actually did a book that came out last year in Denmark, which was if you can believe that, I actually did a book for the Danish Bible Society, a comic book. Which was an album with a retelling of the New Testament, seen with the eyes of Maria Magdalena, which was a really interesting project I did with a Danish writer who has he has published a series of books, and he does some podcasts and stuff where he talks about religion and mysticism and stuff like that, and so we did this book, which was it was a super interesting deep dive into all that stuff, which I probably wouldn't have done otherwise. But it's not because I picked these projects; they just sort of seem to pick me somehow. I don't know what if there's any sort of supernatural agency in that or anything. But it's I think the interesting thing about religion and these religious subjects is that they have been with us for thousands of years, and they will be with us forever. I think. I mean, it's if you look into the future and you say, what will the world look like in 1,000 years? I don't know. Will there be cell phones? Will we have electricity? I don't know about that, but I'm pretty sure we'll still have religion around. So whatever it is, we have to find a way of dealing with it because it's not going away. It seems to be something in human nature that makes us want to have these myths, and that's interesting to explore, I think. I mean, but that's not to say that all these books are about this. I mean, it's more like it's a subtext. It's not like Hornsby and Halo is not a dive into religion or anything like that. It's just a mythology that we have taken and are using as a backdrop for the story. It could have been many other things, but we're just using this specific thing with heaven and hell because it's some good image, some cool imagery, and it's an easily understandable concept. And since we're starting a project that's not based on any existing properties, it's good to have sort of a recognizable thing that people can easily identify when they open the book. Did that make sense? That was a very long reply.
Is that theme something that have there been any concerns, because in the States it can be a bit a touchy subject?
I don't really think too much about it, but I know Tomas is really like, he thinks a lot about what we can, if we can get in trouble with something, and the best way to avoid getting in trouble is just to steer clear of any. We try to sort of steer a middle ground, and like you'll see, there's angels and there's devils, but there's no Jesus, there's no specific religion, there's no. It's like it's like if you can say there's any kind of religion in Hornsby and Halo, then it's more like the pop cultural elements that are left when Christianity washes out to sea again, and there's these bits lying around that we can play with that have sort of become, like, I think anybody anywhere in the world, no matter what their religion, would recognize these elements and say, okay, this is this and this is this, and everybody can sort of relate to them, but they're not specific to any, they're not tied to a specific concept of religion. Like, for instance, we're very now it's also because the kids books and our main characters are 13-year-olds. They're just entering puberty, so we don't have any sexual themes, and I think we're very conscious that we should not, like, you can't have, if you have devils and angels, you have to have concepts of what is good and evil, but we will, for instance, we're not doing anything where we equalize hell with lust or anything like that. It's not going to be, we try to avoid not the subjects, but we avoid tying some things in religion to some subjects that we don't like. We have the concept in Halo and Hornsby is that these two kids have been placed with families that are kind of the opposite of the nature. So that the boy who is the angel has been adopted by a family that is really a bad family. But the way they are bad is that they are really like, they're greedy, they lie, they cheat, they steal. And the girl has been adopted by a family she's a devil, but she's been adopted by a really good family. And the way they're good is that they are like, they're like people who do something for the community. They are like, they help others. They're like, it's a very secular, humanistic way of being good. It's not like we're seeing them go to church or anything like that. It's they may, but if they do, we just don't see it. So we try to just sort of steer clear of these. The way that if you're doing a Donald Duck comic, you steer clear of sexuality because it just doesn't. I mean, Donald Duck has nephews, so they must have been born, but we just don't talk about that somehow. So that's how you deal with these things in kids' comics.
Yeah, I'm now up to issue 7 reading the series, and I was a bit surprised by the family of the angel boy, because they are
they're really bad.
Yeah, and they are taking care of a funeral parlor, so they are more
Yeah,
closer
they're-
to religion than the other.
Yeah. Yes, but it's they're like, but they're very funny. Also because they're funny, they're bad. I mean, these are bad people. But if it had been, like, if this had been an adult horror book, of course, it would have been like one of those families that you hear about in the US that have their kids chained in the basement and all this and blah 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 blah. Instead, what we have is a little more Dickensian light, maybe. So they're really bad, but they're mostly like, but they're also kind of pathetic because they're so obviously greedy and they often end up hurting themselves because they're like really not very, they're criminals, but they're not the smartest criminals in the world. And I think that's the kind of, I like that. I think my favorite when I was writing Donald Duck stories, one of my favorites was always the Beagle Boys. I really like writing the Beagle Boys because they're really bad people, but they're really funny and you can identify with them. And there's also something about them because they're not like evil because they want to destroy the world. They just want not to work and have luxuries, and that's basically the drive that motivates them. And then sometimes they're being a little rough, but they're not like Pig Leg Pete from the Donald Duck comics, who's really like an evil character. He's like the bully. The Beagles are just like lazy, and they just want to get other people's money because they don't want to work. That's basically the whole thing that drives them. And I think that's sort of motivation. I really like that in characters. It's very, I mean, it's crooked, but it's a very honest kind of crookedness, if you understand what I mean.
Do you still read Disney books, or do you have time for reading comics?
I do read some comics, but mostly I read mostly graphic novels nowadays. I don't follow that many books. There are a couple that I want to. I have a list of things I wanted to pick up, and sometimes I get around to them, and sometimes it takes me a while, so I'm not necessarily very current on it. But I try to remember to read. There's Ahoy Comics is pretty. I work for them. Actually, that's another project I worked on that is probably not coming out in Finnish, but I worked on a really strange horror comic for them for a while that came out last year also. Serial, like cereal with a C, like in which. But there's Ahoy Comic puts out some fun. They do humorous books, but they do some really. It's not very often to see funny American books, but they do some really funny books. They did a book called Billionaire Island, which is like a really funny satire. And Elisa Quitney, that I work with at Vertigo, is doing a book called Howl at the moment, which is like based on her mother's experiences as a beatnik in New York, mixed up with some science fiction, which I can't get it to Copenhagen in the floppies, but I'm looking forward to buying the trade paperback when it comes out. So I try to keep abreast of some things.
Sounds like you follow more the authors and stories than.
Yeah, I'm not particularly. I've never been, because I never was really into the superheroes. So it's not like I'm more. For me, it's more actually the writers are more important and the artists also, but it's actually mostly the writers I follow. Yeah.
Any experiences on Finnish comics?
The problem is I can't read them. But it's always it's always good to come here and see how vibrant the scene is. I mean, I don't know how it is when you see it from the Finnish side, but it always feels like the enthusiasm and the do-it-yourself mentality of Finnish comics, I think is really, really, it always makes me feel really good. I always enjoy coming here and see what people are working on, even if I can't read it, and even if none of it is ever translated into Danish, of course.
Is that very different from the Danish comic scene?
No, probably not. But they're on the other side of the curtain, so it's also sometimes if you see other countries, this comic scene in other countries, sometimes it always looks green. The grass always looks greener on the other side of the fence, as we say in Danish. We also have a saying in Danish that you don't want to know how the sausage was made. Mm-hmm. So in Danish comics, it's always, I know these people, so there's no mysticism or anything. It's like...
and we just talked that the Danish comic fair is taking place.
Yeah, it's this weekend actually.
Yeah. But having been there, it seems that it's a bit more American oriented. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think it is these days. Yeah, it is. Yeah. For some reason, Danish comics has become more oriented towards American comics. Yeah.
Have there been any other Danish artists going to the States after you?
Teddy Christiansen, we did it at around the same time.
Yeah.
There was Christian Højgaard was around the same time, was another artist who was doing, but there's not that many. There was actually I can't even remember her name, but one of my colleagues told me that he found out that his neighbor actually had a daughter who was living in the basement and drawing some Dark Horse comics, but I can't remember what her name was, and that was a total surprise to me. I'm not sure if she's still active. This was a few years ago, but so occasionally there will be some, but sometimes I don't even know about them. So, but it's not that many. No.
I think that's pretty much my questions. I think I had something about the publishers. Well, you worked with the big ones, DC, Dark Horse, and now Image. Are there any big differences between them?
Well, but working with Ghost Machine is really different because we are on our own, because we are totally independent teams. So we can decide what we want to do. That's very different. From DC, with DC, it was very much, you got the job. It was very top down. Which is fine. I enjoyed that, but this is obviously very different. Ghost Machine is a very different deal. Other than that, it's jobs.
Okay, I guess that's pretty much everything about me. From me, after I get to my bag, I will.
But we never get to know anything about you, Yoko.
No, you don't need to know anything about me. Well, there's a panel about Spider-Man editors coming up, so maybe there you will hear everything that's needed in Finnish.
Yes, go here, Yoko. Talk about.
Okay, well, in that case, thank you, Peter. Thank you, audience,
Thank you for coming. And
Peter,
thank you for inviting me here.
Yeah, and Peter will be here, so everybody go out,
Yeah,
buy Marlene, buy Halo and Mosby, and get them signed by this guy.
Yes, please do. Yes.
Thank you.
So, and that was the video. Hope you like it. There was an awful lot of stuff about the new Hornsby Halo series. No surprise there, because he's done it. He's created it with Tomasi. So yeah, but yeah. Now Vesa is going to show you the new PoriConi poster for this year, and there you can see it's a beautiful looking poster, and I believe it's done by Mikael Mäkinen from Sarjasmiehet podcast, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So be there if you are in Finland. Come there. If not, watch out the videos. Maybe or maybe not coming from there, but you never know. You never know. But now after the books, Vesa is going to start with his ones, and this is going to be Finnish one. So there's going to be a Starman, and I believe it's signed by, so Peter Snejbjerg signed by. Then Vesa can continue in Finnish.
Alright, ja Snejbjergiltahan on tullut paljon, tai nyt hirvittävän paljon, mutta jonkun verran sarjakuvaa myös suomeksi. Esimerkiksi Valonprikaati.
So it's the Light Brigade by Peter Snejbjerg in English. I know that there's single issues of that one.
Yes.
And it's also done with Tomasi, so.
Ja Snejbjerg on tehnyt myöskin Batmania jonkun verran, mutta suomeksi ei ole ihan hirveästi tullut muuta ihmeempää, mutta toivoisin tosiaan, että tämä uusin Hornsby et Halo tulisi myöskin suomeksi julkaistuna. Tämä on tosi kovaa kamaa.
Yeah, have to agree on that. So Vesa was saying that Hornsby and Halo is an excellent, cool stuff. So I'm gonna jump off and show my books, because they are only Hornsby and Halo. I had the first 4 issues were out when Snejbjerg was in Finland. So what did I do? I got them signed. So Here's the first issue of the Hornsby Halo series. There you can see under my hand the signature. Then of course I had to get some variant for the first one, so I don't usually do sketch covers, but I couldn't pass on this, so I asked Snejbjerg to do Battle Beast sketch cover for me, and he signed it also. So there you go. Battle Beast #1, sketched by Peter Snejbjerg and signed also by Peter Snejbjerg. Cool looking one. Battle Beast always rules. Then Hornsby and Halo, issue 2, also signed by Peter Snejbjerg. Then issue 3, and of course issue 4. So Mr. Peter Snejbjerg, thank you, and I'm hoping that we will meet again. It was fun, it was a blast over the weekend, and I think that Vesa can agree.
Yes.
Yeah, so we thank you, and Vesa is going to lead us off with some Finnish beautiful words.
Alright, ei sen kummempia. Me nähdään PoriConissa. Tule sinne.
Thank you, see you, bye.